My name is Brigid. I'm 69 years old, and this is the story I kept silent about until I couldn't anymore. I woke up to the sound of voices, not the kind that gently pull you from sleep, but the kind that pierce through darkness like cold water. My eyelids felt heavy, as if someone had placed stones on them. The smell hit me first, that sharp chemical hospital smell that makes your stomach turn. Disinfectant, plastic, fear. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My fingers barely twitched. I could hear everything, though. Every word, every breath. She can't take care of herself anymore. That was Claire's voice, my daughter-in-law, the woman my son had married 8 years ago, the woman I had welcomed into my home with open arms and Sunday dinners. She's becoming a danger to herself. We need to put her in a nursing home. The sooner, the better. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and tell her she was wrong. But my body was a prison, and I was trapped inside it, listening to my own life being dismantled. Mrs. Patterson, a nurse's voice, softer, uncertain. Don't you think we should wait for the doctor? He ordered some additional tests. I know my mother-in-law, Claire interrupted, her tone sharp as a knife. I've been taking care of her for months. She forgets things. She falls. Just last week, she left the stove on. Do you want to wait until she burns the house down? My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would break through my ribs. Had I left the stove on? I tried to remember. I tried to see through the fog that had been covering my mind like a heavy blanket for weeks. Maybe months. Time had become so strange lately. The tea. I could taste it even now, that bitter edge Claire's tea always had. She said it was a special blend, something to help me sleep, to calm my nerves. She was so thoughtful, always bringing me that blue and white porcelain cup, the one with tiny painted roses, my grandmother's cup. She knew it was my favorite. Drink it while it's hot, Mom, she would say, smiling that perfect smile. And I would drink it, every afternoon, every evening, because she cared, because I trusted her. The room tilted even though I was lying down. Or was I? Was I even really awake? Then I heard footsteps, firm, purposeful. Mrs. Dawson. A man's voice, authoritative. The doctor. I need to speak with Mrs. Patterson, alone, and then I'll need you to step out while I talk with her. But I'm her family, Claire protested. I have the right to— The patient has rights too, he said, his voice colder now. And the test results revealed something she needs to know, something that changes everything. The air in the room shifted. I felt it, even through the fog. What test results? Claire's voice was different now, higher, strained. Papers rustled. I heard the doctor moving closer to my bed. Mrs. Patterson, I know you can hear me, he said gently. Your eyes are moving. You're in what we call a twilight state, conscious but not fully responsive. It should pass soon, but I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I tried so hard to open my eyes, to see his face, to understand. We ran a comprehensive toxicology screen, he continued. Standard procedure for unexplained falls and altered consciousness in elderly patients. Mrs. Patterson, the results showed elevated levels of benzodiazepines in your system, specifically a sedative that you were never prescribed. The room went silent. When Claire spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. That's impossible. The levels we found, the doctor said, and I could hear the steel beneath his professional calm, are consistent with regular, repeated doses over an extended period. This isn't accidental. Someone has been giving you medication without your knowledge or consent. Through the haze, through the fog, through everything. I heard Claire's breathing change. Quick, shallow, panicked, and somewhere deep inside my frozen body, in the part of me that could still feel, I finally understood. The tea. The blue and white cup with the painted roses, her gentle insistence, her perfect smile. My own daughter-in-law had been poisoning me. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were slowly destroying you? Sometimes the people we welcome into our hearts are the ones who hurt us most. If you've experienced betrayal from someone you loved, tell me in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not alone in this. But that moment in the hospital room, as the truth hung in the air like smoke, that was just the beginning of a story I never imagined I'd have to tell. Let me take you back. Before the hospital. Before the fog. before I understood what was being stolen from me, piece by piece, day by day. 3 years ago, my life was simple and full. I lived in the same house where my husband Robert and I had raised our son Thomas. Robert had passed 5 years before, a heart attack in his sleep. Peaceful, they said, but nothing about losing him was peaceful for me. We had been married for 43 years. The house felt too big without him, too quiet. I kept busy. That's what you do when grief threatens to swallow you whole. I tended my garden, roses, mostly, red and white ones that climbed the trellis by the back porch. I volunteered at the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays, reading to children who sat cross-legged on the carpet, their eyes wide with wonder. I baked pies for the church fundraisers, apple, cherry, pecan in the fall. Every Sunday, Thomas would come for dinner, just the two of us. He'd sit in his father's chair and we'd talk about his week, his work at the accounting firm, his life. He was 41 then, successful, kind, everything a mother could hope for. But I worried about him. He worked too much. He seemed lonely. Then one Sunday, he brought Claire. "Mom," he said. His whole face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy. "This is Claire. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, and I wanted you to meet her." She was beautiful. 40 years old, with smooth, dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that seemed to take in everything. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a small bouquet of yellow roses. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, her voice warm and respectful. "Thomas has told me so much about you. These are for you. He said yellow was your favorite." They were. Robert used to bring me yellow roses on our anniversary. I invited her in, and she moved through my home as if she already belonged there. She admired the photos on the mantel. Thomas as a baby, our wedding picture, Robert in his Navy uniform. She asked about each one. She listened. During dinner, she ate everything I served and asked for seconds. "This roast is incredible," she said. "Would you teach me your recipe? I want to learn to cook the way you do." My heart opened to her like a flower to sun. They married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Claire wore a cream-colored dress and cried when she said her vows. Thomas looked at her like she was his whole world. After the wedding, she started coming by on weekday afternoons. "You shouldn't be alone so much," she'd say. "Let me keep you company." She'd bring that blue and white porcelain cup, my grandmother's cup that I'd given her as a wedding gift. "I brought it back," she said. "I know how much you love it. Let me make you tea in it. A special blend I found. It's supposed to help with stress and sleep." The tea was slightly bitter, but I didn't mind. It was the gesture that mattered, the thoughtfulness. She'd sit with me in the living room, and we'd talk. Or rather, she'd talk, and I'd listen. About Thomas, about their plans, about how lucky she felt to have married into such a loving family. "You know, Mom, can I call you Mom? I never had a real mother growing up," she told me one afternoon, her eyes glistening. "My own mother left when I was 7. My father remarried, but his new wife never wanted me around. When I met Thomas, when I met you, I finally felt like I had a home." I reached across and squeezed her hand. "You do have a home, sweetheart. You have us." She smiled, but looking back now, I can see what I couldn't then. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. For 2 years, our routine continued. She'd visit, we'd have tea, I'd feel drowsy afterward and take a nap. "Rest, Mom," she'd say. "You work too hard. You need to take care of yourself." I trusted her completely. She was my daughter, the daughter I'd never had, the woman my son loved. I never noticed when the changes started. When did I begin forgetting things? When did the house start feeling confusing, like the rooms had moved when I wasn't looking? When did climbing the stairs become so difficult? "You're just getting older," Claire would say, her hand on my shoulder. "It happens to everyone." Thomas was worried. I could see it in his face during our Sunday dinners, which now included Claire. "Mom, are you feeling okay? You seem tired all the time." "I'm fine," I'd say, even though I wasn't sure anymore. Even though some mornings I'd wake up and couldn't remember what day it was. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Thomas suggested. "I already took her," Claire said quickly. "Dr. Morrison said it's just age, normal cognitive decline. Nothing to worry about yet." I didn't remember going to any doctor. But the days had become so blurry by then, all running together like watercolors in rain. The blue and white cup appeared more often. Morning tea, afternoon tea, evening tea. Drink up, Claire would say. It's good for you. And I would drink, because I trusted her, because she loved me, because she was family. Where are you listening from? Write your city in the comments. Sometimes I wonder how many of us have stories like this. Stories we kept quiet because we couldn't believe they were really happening. But there was one afternoon, about 4 months before I ended up in that hospital, when something shifted. Something small, something I couldn't quite name. It was a Wednesday afternoon in late September. I remember because the maple tree outside my kitchen window had just started turning red at the edges, the way it did every year when summer began letting go. Claire came by as usual, around 2 o'clock. She had her own key by then. Thomas had insisted on it. In case something happens and you need help, he'd said, it makes me feel better knowing she can get to you quickly. I was in the living room, looking through an old photo album. Pictures of Thomas as a child, Robert and me on our honeymoon in Virginia Beach, my parents' 50th anniversary party. The pages were yellowed and fragile, and touching them felt like holding time itself. Mom? Claire's voice came from the kitchen. I'm making your tea. Thank you, dear, I called back. But something made me pause. A sound. The cabinet opening. Not the one where I kept the tea bags, but the one above the refrigerator. The high one where I stored things I rarely used. Serving platters, Robert's old thermos, things from the past. I heard glass clinking, then water running, then silence. When Claire came into the living room carrying the blue and white cup, her smile was perfect as always. Here you go, she said, setting it on the coffee table in front of me. Let it cool for a minute. She sat down beside me and picked up the photo album. Oh, look at Thomas, she laughed, pointing to a picture of him at age 6, missing his 2 front teeth. He was adorable. He was my whole world, I said softly. He still is, Claire replied, and something in her tone made me look at her. Her eyes weren't on the photo anymore. They were on me, studying me, measuring me. The tea sat on the table, steam rising from it. Usually, Claire would hand it directly to me, but today she'd set it down and seemed in no hurry for me to drink it. How are you feeling today? She asked. Any dizziness? Confusion? I feel fine, I said, though that wasn't entirely true. My head had felt heavy all week, like it was filled with cotton. You know, Thomas and I have been talking, Claire continued, her voice casual but careful. We think it might be time to consider some changes. This house is so big for you. All these stairs, the maintenance. What if you fell and no one was here? My chest tightened. This is my home, Claire. Robert and I built our life here. I know, she soothed, patting my hand. We're not talking about anything immediate, just thinking ahead, planning. There's a beautiful assisted living facility in town. Very nice. We drove by it last week. They have activities, nurses on staff, people your own age to socialize with. I don't need. Your tea is getting cold, she interrupted gently, gesturing to the cup. I reached for it, but my hand hesitated. That sound from the kitchen. The high cabinet. Why had she opened that cabinet? What's wrong? Claire asked. Nothing, I said quickly, too quickly. I picked up the cup. The porcelain was warm against my palms. The tea smelled different today. Not just bitter, but metallic somehow. Strange. I brought it to my lips but didn't drink. Is something wrong with it? Claire's voice had an edge now, barely noticeable, like a hairline crack in glass. No, I set the cup down. I'm not very thirsty right now, maybe later. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something cross Claire's face. Irritation, frustration. It disappeared so quickly, I almost thought I'd imagined it. Of course, she said, her smile returning. Whenever you're ready. But she didn't leave. She stayed sitting beside me, and I felt her watching the cup, watching me, waiting. The afternoon stretched out uncomfortably. Claire talked about nothing. The weather, a sale at the grocery store, something funny Thomas had said. But her eyes kept drifting to that blue and white cup sitting on my coffee table, its contents growing cold. Finally, around 4 o'clock, she stood up. I should get going. Thomas will be home soon, and I need to start dinner. She picked up the cup, and I watched her carry it to the kitchen. I heard the sink run. When she came back, the cup was clean and dry in her hands. I'll see you tomorrow, she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips were cold. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and tried to understand what I was feeling. Doubt. That's what it was. A small seed of doubt that had been planted and was starting to grow. I walked to the kitchen and opened the high cabinet above the refrigerator. There, pushed to the back behind the serving platters, was a small amber prescription bottle. I took it down, my hands shaking slightly. The label was faded, but I could still read it. Robert Patterson, diazepam. Take as needed for anxiety. Expired 2019. Robert's old medication. From years ago. From when he'd had trouble sleeping after his brother died. Why would Claire have been in this cabinet? I stood there holding that bottle, and for the first time, a terrible thought entered my mind. A thought I immediately tried to push away because it was too awful, too impossible. But once a thought like that takes root, you can't undo it. I put the bottle back exactly where I'd found it and closed the cabinet door. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, and I kept seeing Claire's face when I wouldn't drink that tea. That flash of frustration. The next day, she came again. Same time, same routine. But when she brought the tea, I thanked her and set it aside, saying I'd drink it after I finished my lunch. This time, there was no mistaking the look in her eyes. You really should drink it while it's hot, she said. That's when it works best. Works best for what? I wanted to ask. But I didn't. I just smiled and nodded and waited for her to leave. After she was gone, I poured the tea down the sink and watched it swirl away. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To the fog in my head. To how it was always worse after Claire's visits. To how my hands would shake. To how the world would tilt and blur. I started keeping a journal, writing down every time Claire came, every time she brought tea, and how I felt afterward. The entries were shaky. My handwriting had gotten so bad, but I needed to see it written down. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining things. Because the alternative, that my son's wife, the woman I'd welcomed as a daughter, could be deliberately hurting me, was too monstrous to believe. But sometimes, the most monstrous things are the truest ones. I still wonder, when did you first realize someone you trusted was not who they seemed? What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments, because even now, looking back, I'm not sure I did everything right. 2 weeks later, I collapsed in my kitchen. That's how I ended up in the hospital, in that bed, unable to move, but able to hear everything. The human mind is a strange thing. It will work so hard to protect you from truths you're not ready to face. For 2 weeks after I found Robert's old medication, I told myself stories. Innocent stories, reasonable stories. Maybe Claire had been looking for something else in that cabinet. Maybe she'd opened the wrong one by accident. Maybe I was wrong about everything. Maybe the fog in my head really was just age catching up with me. After all, I was 69 years old. People forget things. People get tired. People slow down. But my body knew what my mind refused to accept. I stopped drinking the tea entirely. I'd smile and accept the blue and white cup, set it down, and later pour it out when Claire wasn't looking. Sometimes in the sink, sometimes in the potted plant by the window, the one that had mysteriously died 2 months earlier. And a strange thing happened. The fog began to lift, not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, like morning mist burning off a lake. My thoughts became clearer. My hands stopped shaking quite so much. When I woke up in the morning, I knew what day it was. I started to feel like myself again. Claire noticed. Of course she noticed. "You seem better this week," she said one afternoon, watching me closely. More alert. "I feel better," I told her, and it was true. "Maybe you've been drinking more water," she suggested. "Dehydration can cause confusion in older people." "Maybe," I said, not meeting her eyes. She brought the tea more frequently after that. Morning visits, afternoon visits. She'd sit with me and watch until I took a sip, her smile never wavering, but her eyes had become harder somehow, more insistent. "Drink your tea, Mom," she'd say. "I made it especially for you." I became good at pretending. I'd bring the cup to my lips and tip it slightly, letting the liquid touch my mouth without swallowing. I'd make appreciative sounds. I'd set the cup down with some still inside, And later, when she was in the bathroom or looking at her phone, I'd add water from my glass to make it look like I'd drunk more than I had. It was exhausting, this performance, this dance between truth and denial. Thomas came by one evening without Claire. He said she had a headache and stayed home. We sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us like old times. "Mom," he said, his voice heavy with worry, "I need to talk to you about something." My heart clenched. "What is it?" "Claire is worried about you. She says you've been acting strange, paranoid. She thinks you might be developing dementia." The word hit me like a slap. Dementia. "Thomas, I'm not." "She says you hide things. You won't eat or drink when she's around. You stare at her like you don't trust her." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom, I know it's hard to accept, but these are signs, early signs. The doctor even said—" "What doctor?" I interrupted. "When did I see a doctor?" He looked confused. "Dr. Morrison, Claire took you 3 months ago. You don't remember?" I didn't remember. But was that because it never happened, or because I truly had forgotten? The doubt crept back in, cold and paralyzing. "Claire has been so patient," Thomas continued. "She visits you every day, makes sure you're eating, brings you that special tea you love. But Mom, we need to think about next steps. Maybe having someone here full time. Or maybe—" "Don't say it," I whispered. "A care facility," he said anyway, his eyes sad and apologetic. "Just until you're stable. They have wonderful places now, clean, safe, with medical staff who can—" "I don't need medical staff. I need my home. I need my life. Mom, Thomas, please." My voice broke. "Please believe me. I'm not confused. I'm not paranoid. Something is wrong, but it's not what you think." He looked at me the way you look at someone who's slipping away. With love, with pity, with the helpless knowledge that you can't save them. After he left, I sat alone in the dark kitchen and cried. Because what if he was right? What if I was losing my mind? What if these suspicions about Claire were just delusions, symptoms of a deteriorating brain? How do you trust yourself when everyone you love tells you you're wrong? I went to bed that night determined to prove I wasn't crazy. I would document everything. Times, dates, how I felt. I would be scientific about it. Rational. But the next morning, when I woke up, I couldn't remember going to bed. The last thing I recalled was sitting at the kitchen table. Everything after that was blank. There was a glass of water on my nightstand, half empty. Had I drunk from it? Had someone given it to me? My head felt like it was stuffed with wool again. My tongue was thick and dry. I tried to stand, but my legs buckled. I grabbed the nightstand, knocking over the glass. Water and something else, a chalky residue at the bottom of the glass, spilled across the wooden surface. I stared at that residue, at the white powder dissolving into the water. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't age. This wasn't dementia. This was being done to me. But knowing and proving are two different things. I managed to get downstairs, moving slowly, holding onto walls. I needed to call someone. But who? Thomas wouldn't believe me. Claire had made sure of that. She'd been so careful, so methodical, painting me as confused and declining. Any accusation I made would sound like paranoid ranting from a sick old woman. I was trapped in my own home, my own life, my own weakening body. The doorbell rang. I looked at the clock. 2 p.m. Like clockwork. Claire. I thought about not answering. But she had a key. She'd let herself in. And if I didn't answer, if I tried to hide or resist, it would just be more evidence of my confusion. I opened the door. She stood there with that smile, that perfect mask, and in her hands was the blue and white porcelain cup. "Hello, Mom," she said. "I brought your tea. As I tell you this now, I wonder if you've ever felt trapped by someone else's version of you. When has someone twisted reality so completely that you questioned your own mind? Write your experience below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the only thing that keeps us fighting." That afternoon, I drank the tea. I had to. Claire sat right there, watching, and I was too weak to fight anymore. Too tired. Too defeated. "Good," she said, as I swallowed the last bitter drops. "That's good." The room started spinning within minutes. I tried to stand, to get to the phone, to do something. but my legs were water and the floor was tilting and Claire's face above me was blurring and sharp at the same time. "Shh," I heard her say from very far away. "Just rest. It'll all be over soon." That's the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital, unable to move, hearing her tell the nurse to put me in a nursing home, before the doctor walked in with my test results, before everything changed. The doctor's words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Benzodiazepines, sedatives, medication. I was never prescribed. Someone has been giving you this without your knowledge or consent. Through my half-closed eyes, through the fog that was finally starting to clear, I could see Claire's silhouette against the harsh hospital lights. She was backing away from my bed, one small step, then another. "That's impossible," she said again, but her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. What remained was thin and sharp, like ice cracking. Maybe the lab made a mistake. Maybe she got confused and took something. You said yourself she's been having memory problems. Mrs. Dawson. The doctor's voice was steel. The levels in her system are far too consistent for accidental ingestion. This indicates deliberate, repeated dosing over an extended period. Possibly months. We're talking about a serious crime here. I heard papers shuffling, footsteps moving closer to my bed. "Mrs. Patterson, can you hear me? If you can, try to squeeze my hand." I felt his warm palm against mine. I tried. God, I tried so hard. My fingers twitched. It was barely anything, but it was something. "Good," he said softly. "That's very good. You're coming back to us." "I don't understand," Claire said, and now I could hear the panic bleeding through. "I've been taking care of her. I visit her every day. I make her tea." She stopped. The silence was deafening. "You make her tea," the doctor repeated slowly. "Yes, but it's just tea. Chamomile. Nothing else. I would never." Her voice cracked. "She's my mother-in-law. I love her." "Where is her son, Thomas Patterson? We need to contact him immediately." "He's at work. I can call him. I should be the one to—" "No." The doctor's voice was firm. "The hospital will contact him, and we've already notified the police. They'll want to speak with everyone involved." "Police." The words seemed to suck all the air from the room. "The police?" Claire's voice went up an octave. "You're calling the police? On me? I haven't done anything wrong. She's old and confused, and you're believing this mistake, this lab error, over me? Mrs. Dawson, I need you to remain calm. Don't tell me to be calm." She was shouting now, all pretense gone. "I've spent 2 years taking care of that woman. 2 years of my life. Do you know how exhausting it is? How draining? She's stubborn and difficult, and my husband won't hear a word against her, and I've tried so hard to be patient, to be kind, to do the right thing. By poisoning her." The doctor's words were quiet, but devastating. The room went silent again. I heard Claire breathing, quick, shallow gasps, the sound of someone drowning on dry land. "I want a lawyer," she whispered. "I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer. That's your right. But you're not leaving this hospital until the police arrive." Footsteps retreated. A door opened. Voices in the hallway. Then the door closed again, and I heard someone sit down beside my bed. The doctor, I thought. His hand was still holding mine. "Mrs. Patterson, I know this is traumatic," he said gently, "but you're safe now. The medication will work its way out of your system. You'll feel confused for a while, maybe a few days, but you will recover. Do you understand?" I squeezed his hand again, harder this time. "That's it," he encouraged. "You're strong. Stronger than whoever did this to you realized." Time passed strangely. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. Nurses came and went. I heard clipboard sounds, the beep of machines, hushed conversations. Through it all, Claire sat in the corner of the room. I couldn't see her, but I could feel her presence. Heavy, hostile. Then I heard a sound that made my heart break and soar at the same time. My son's voice, loud and frightened, coming from the hallway. "Where is she? Where's my mother?" The door burst open. "Thomas," Claire started. "What the hell is going on?" Thomas demanded. "The hospital called me. They said something about poisoning and police and— Mom, can you hear me?" I felt his hands on my face, warm and familiar, and I tried so hard to open my eyes. They fluttered. I saw light, shapes. His face blurry and terrified, hovering above mine. "Mom?" he choked. "Oh God, Mom. Mr. Patterson." The doctor again. "Your mother is stable, but we need to discuss the test results. The nurse mentioned something about benzodiazepines, but Mom doesn't take those. She doesn't take anything except her blood pressure medication." "That's correct. She shouldn't have any sedatives in her system, but she does. In significant quantities. Someone has been giving them to her regularly." I watched Thomas process this, confusion, disbelief, and then, slowly, horribly, understanding. He turned to look at Claire. "No," he said. The word was barely audible. "No. Tell me you didn't." "Thomas, listen to me." Claire stood up, reaching for him, but he backed away like she was on fire. "The tea," he whispered. "You said it was special. You said it helped her sleep. Oh my God, the tea. It was for her own good." Claire's voice rose in desperation. She was getting worse. She needed professional care, but she wouldn't listen, and you wouldn't listen, and I was trying to help. "Help?" Thomas's voice was raw. "You call this help?" She was becoming a danger to herself. Someone had to do something. Someone had to make the hard decisions. "So you drugged her?" He was shouting now. "So you could what? Put her in a nursing home? Get her out of the way?" "Get her out of the way?" Claire laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "Do you know what your mother's house is worth, Thomas? Do you know how much equity is sitting in that property? But she wouldn't sell it. She wouldn't downsize. She wouldn't even consider it. All that money, just sitting there, wasted on one stubborn old woman." The slap echoed through the room. I'd never heard my son hit anyone before, never imagined he could. But there it was, the sharp crack of his palm against her face. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking. "Get out of this room. Get away from my mother. Get out of my life." "Thomas, get out!" Claire ran. I heard her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway, heard her sobbing, heard the sound of her running away from the ruins of her perfect plan. Thomas collapsed into the chair beside my bed and took my hand. He was crying, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't see it. I didn't believe you. God forgive me. I didn't believe you." I squeezed his hand with everything I had. This time, my eyes opened, really opened, and I saw my son's face, wet with tears, twisted with guilt and grief and love. "Mom," he breathed, "you're awake." I tried to speak. My throat was so dry. The word came out as barely a whisper. "Thomas." He pressed my hand to his cheek and wept. I still wonder if I did the right thing, if I fought hard enough, spoke up soon enough. "What about you? What would you have done in my place? When someone you trust destroys that trust so completely, how do you move forward?" Outside the room, I could hear police radios crackling, official voices, the machinery of justice beginning to turn. But in that moment, all that mattered was my son's hand in mine and the knowledge that I had survived, that I had been heard, that the truth, no matter how painful, was finally free. I spent 4 days in that hospital bed. 4 days of my body slowly remembering how to be strong again. 4 days of police interviews, lawyer consultations, and watching my son's marriage crumble like old paper. The first detective who came to speak with me was a woman in her 50s named Detective Maria Santos. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking that I appreciated. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, sitting beside my bed with a notepad. "I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you remember. Take your time." So I did. I told her about the tea, about finding Robert's old medication, about the fog that would descend after Claire's visits, about the journal I'd started keeping, the one the police later found hidden under my mattress at home, pages filled with shaky handwriting documenting dates, times, and symptoms. "You were documenting your own poisoning," Detective Santos said quietly. "You knew on some level what was happening to you." "I knew," I whispered. "But knowing and being believed are 2 different things." She reached across and squeezed my hand. "You're believed now." They searched my house. In the high cabinet above the refrigerator, they found Robert's medication bottle, nearly empty now, though it had been almost full when he died 5 years ago. In Claire's car, They found a small Ziploc bag with 4 pills remaining. The same pills. She'd been so confident, so certain she'd never be caught, that she hadn't even bothered to hide the evidence properly. Thomas came every day. He'd sit beside my bed, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding my hand in silence. His eyes were hollow. He'd aged 10 years in 4 days. "She's been served with divorce papers," he told me on the 3rd day. Her lawyer tried to get her released on bail, but given the circumstances, attempted murder, elder abuse, the judge denied it. "She's in county jail." "Thomas," I said softly, "I'm sorry." He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Sorry? Mom, you're sorry? For what?" "For your marriage, for your life being torn apart." "You didn't tear anything apart," he said fiercely. "She did. She did this. Not you. Never you." But I saw the loss in his eyes. He'd loved her. Maybe he still did, in some broken, twisted way. Love doesn't die clean and easy. It lingers like smoke, even when the fire has burned everything to ash. On the 4th day, they brought me the blue and white porcelain cup. It had been seized as evidence and tested. The inside was stained with residue from months of drugged tea. "This was your grandmother's cup," Detective Santos said, handling it carefully with gloved hands. "I'm sorry, but it's evidence now. We'll have to keep it until after the trial." I looked at that cup, the cup I'd loved, the cup I'd given to Claire as a wedding gift, the cup she'd used as a weapon against me, and I felt something break inside my chest. "I don't want it back," I said. "Ma'am?" "After the trial. Keep it. Destroy it. Give it to a museum. I don't care. I never want to see it again." She nodded, understanding. Some objects become so tainted by betrayal that they can never be clean again. Thomas drove me home on the 5th day. We pulled into my driveway, and I sat in the car for a long moment, staring at my house, my home, the place I'd raised my son, the place I'd loved my husband, the place where Claire had slowly tried to erase me. "I can stay with you," Thomas offered. "Take a few weeks off work. I don't want you to be alone." "I need to be alone," I told him gently. "I need to remember how to live in my own space again, how to trust my own mind." He walked me to the door anyway, carried my small hospital bag inside, made sure I had food in the refrigerator and working phones and all my medications, my real medications, prescribed by real doctors. Before he left, he turned to me in the doorway. "Mom, I need to say something, and I need you to hear me." His voice cracked. "I failed you. When you tried to tell me something was wrong, I didn't listen. I thought you were getting old, getting confused, and I just accepted Claire's version of reality over yours. My own mother, and I didn't believe you." "Thomas." "No, please, let me finish." Tears were streaming down his face. "You raised me better than that. Dad raised me better than that. To always listen, to always protect the people we love. And I didn't. I chose my wife over you, and it almost cost you your life." I cupped his face in my hands, the way I used to when he was small and had scraped his knee or lost a toy. "You loved your wife," I said. "That's not a failing. That's who you are, someone who loves completely, who trusts deeply. Claire took advantage of that beautiful part of you. She weaponized your love. But Thomas, listen to me. You are not responsible for what she did. You are only responsible for what you do now." He pressed his forehead against mine and sobbed like a child. After he left, I walked through my house room by room. The kitchen where Claire had made her poisoned tea. The living room where I'd sat, fog-headed and confused, while she planned my imprisonment. The bedroom where I'd wake up not remembering how I got there. Every space held ghosts now, memories of violation, of betrayal. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Thomas and I had eaten 1,000 meals, and I let myself grieve. Not just for what Claire had done, but for what I'd lost. My sense of safety, my ability to trust easily, my son's marriage, the daughter I'd thought I'd gained. The phone rang that evening, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Patterson?" A woman's voice, formal and cold. "This is Jennifer Marsh. I'm Claire Dawson's attorney." My hand tightened on the phone. "My client would like to speak with you," the lawyer continued. "She's hoping you might consider—" "No, Mrs. Patterson. If you would just—" "No. Tell your client that I have nothing to say to her. Tell her that when she stands in front of a judge and jury, I will be there. I will tell them everything, and I will watch justice be served." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger, from strength, from the knowledge that I had survived something meant to destroy me, and I was still standing. That night, I made myself a cup of tea. Real tea. Just chamomile and honey in a simple white mug. I sat in my living room and drank it slowly, tasting every sip, feeling my clear mind and steady hands and the solid reality of my own body. I was 79 years old. I had been betrayed by someone I'd loved and trusted. My family was fractured. My sense of safety had been shattered. But I was alive. I was free. And I would not let what Claire had done define the rest of my story. I still wonder, when you've lost something precious through someone else's cruelty, how do you reclaim yourself? How do you rebuild trust, not just in others, but in your own judgment? What would you have done in my place? The trial was set for 8 months away. 8 months of waiting. 8 months of healing. 8 months of learning to be Brigid again. Not the confused, drugged shadow Claire had tried to make me. But in those 8 months, something else happened. Something I never expected. The universe, it seems, keeps its own accounts. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in that courtroom every single day, my back straight, my hands folded in my lap, and I watched my daughter-in-law's carefully constructed life collapse like a house of cards. Claire looked different. Her hair, once so perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. She'd lost weight. Her expensive clothes had been replaced by a plain gray suit her lawyer had bought for her. But it was her eyes that struck me most. They were empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything human. The prosecutor was a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen. She laid out the evidence methodically, piece by piece. The medication, the toxicology reports, my journal, testimony from neighbors who'd seen Claire coming and going from my house daily with that blue and white cup. Financial records showing Claire had been researching the value of my property, looking at assisted living facilities, even meeting with real estate agents. This was not an act of mercy, Rebecca told the jury. This was attempted murder for financial gain, disguised as caregiving. Claire's lawyer tried to paint a different picture. He called her a devoted daughter-in-law, overwhelmed by the burden of caring for an elderly woman. He suggested I was confused, paranoid, that perhaps I'd been taking medication on my own and didn't remember. But the evidence was overwhelming. The empty prescription bottle with Robert's name, the pills in Claire's car, the residue in the cup, my journal entries documenting my suspicions, the testimony from Dr. Morrison, who confirmed he'd never seen me, despite Claire's claims. Thomas testified. I'll never forget watching my son on that witness stand, his voice breaking as he described how Claire had convinced him I was declining, how she'd isolated me, how she'd made him doubt his own mother. She told me it was love, he said, tears streaming down his face. She said everything she did was out of love. But love doesn't poison. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't steal someone's mind and call it kindness. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder. Elder abuse. Fraud. The judge sentenced her to 18 years in prison. When the gavel fell, Claire turned to look at me. Our eyes met across that courtroom, and I saw something flicker in her face. Not remorse, not apology, just a cold, bitter hatred that she'd been caught. I held her gaze until she looked away. That was 3 years ago. I'm 72 now, and my life has found a new rhythm. Thomas comes for dinner every Sunday, just like before. We don't talk about Claire much. The divorce was finalized. He started dating again. Cautiously, carefully, but with hope. I still live in my house. I tend my garden. I volunteer at the library. I've joined a support group for elder abuse survivors, and once a month, I share my story with others who've been betrayed by people they trusted. But last month, something happened that I need to tell you about. I received a letter. It was forwarded through my lawyer from the State Women's Correctional Facility, from Claire. My hands shook when I saw her name. Thomas was there. We have a rule now that I don't open anything from her alone. And he asked if I wanted him to throw it away. No, I said. I want to read it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on lined paper. Her handwriting, once so perfect, was jagged now, rushed. It started with justifications. She'd been under so much stress. Thomas worked too much. I was stubborn. She'd only been trying to help. The medication was just to calm me down, make me more agreeable. She never meant for it to go so far. But then, on the third page, something shifted. "Prison changes you," she wrote. "Not in the redemptive way they talk about in movies. It breaks you. Every day here I wake up and I remember what I did, what I became. I see myself in the other women here, the ones who justified their cruelty, who told themselves they had good reasons. We all have our stories. We all thought we were special, different, justified. I'm not special. I'm just someone who chose greed over love, convenience over compassion. Someone who hurt a woman who'd only ever shown me kindness. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I understand now what I took from you. Not just your health or your home or your peace. I took your ability to trust, and that's something I can never give back. The irony isn't lost on me. I tried to put you in a prison of fog and confusion. Now I'm in a real one. And unlike you, I did this to myself. I'm sorry, Brigid. For what it's worth, from someone whose words mean nothing anymore. I'm sorry." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it away. "Do you believe her?" Thomas asked quietly. "I think she believes herself," I said. "Whether that's genuine remorse or just the reality of consequence finally catching up to her, I don't know. Maybe both. Are you going to write back?" I thought about it. I thought about Claire sitting in a cell, the same age now that I was when she started poisoning me. I thought about 18 years stretching ahead of her. 18 years of being told when to eat, when to sleep, when to speak. The very thing she'd planned for me. "No," I said finally. "My healing doesn't require her redemption. Her consequences are her own. But here's what I learned, and what I want you to understand. Karma isn't about revenge. It's about truth catching up with lies. Claire didn't suffer because I wished it on her. She suffered because she made choices, and choices have consequences. She built her own prison long before she ever set foot in one. Last week I was at the grocery store and ran into one of Claire's old friends, a woman named Patricia who used to come to our family dinners. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, but I smiled and said hello. "How are you, Brigid?" she asked carefully. "I'm well," I told her. "Really well. I heard about Claire," Patricia said quietly. "About everything. I can't believe, we had no idea." "None of us did," I said gently. "That's what made her dangerous." Patricia hesitated, then leaned closer. "I visited her once. Last year. She asked me to come. Brigid, she looks so," she struggled for the word, "broken, empty, like there's nothing left inside her." I thought about that emptiness I'd seen in Claire's eyes at the trial, how it had grown from a flicker to a void. "She broke herself," I said softly. "When you spend your energy destroying someone else, you destroy yourself in the process. That's not me being cruel. That's just truth." I still wonder, have you ever watched someone face the natural consequences of their own cruelty? Does it bring peace? Or does it just remind you of how much was lost? What would you have felt in my place? Tell me in the comments, because even now, my feelings about Claire are complicated. I don't wish her well, but I don't wish her harm either. I simply wish her gone from my story. The blue and white porcelain cup was returned to me after the trial ended. It sat in an evidence box for 2 years before the state finally released it. They sent it by registered mail, wrapped in bubble wrap, with a letter saying I could claim it or authorize its destruction. I took it to the lake where Robert and I used to have picnics when Thomas was small. I stood at the edge of the water and held that cup in my hands one last time. Then I threw it as hard as I could. It arced through the air, caught the sunlight for a moment, and disappeared beneath the surface without a sound. Some things can't be cleaned. They can only be let go. I'm 72 years old now, and I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am. That might not sound like much to you, but for someone who spent months not being sure if her own mind was trustworthy, it's everything. My garden is thriving. Last spring, I planted new roses, yellow ones like Robert used to bring me, and deep red ones that bloom all summer. I sit on my back porch most evenings with a cup of tea, real tea, nothing added, in a simple ceramic mug I bought at the farmer's market. and I watched the sun go down over the same yard where I raised my son. Thomas is doing better. He's dating a woman named Sarah, a kindergarten teacher with laugh lines around her eyes, and a golden retriever named Murphy. She came to Sunday dinner last month, and I watched her carefully, not with suspicion, but with awareness. I've learned the difference. Sarah helped me with the dishes afterward, and as we stood at the sink, she said quietly, "Thomas told me what happened, what his ex-wife did to you. I can't imagine how hard it must be to trust again." I handed her a plate to dry. "It is hard," I said honestly. "But the alternative, closing my heart completely, living in fear, that would be letting Claire win." She took enough from me. I won't give her my future too. Sarah smiled, and I saw genuine warmth there. Time will tell if she's who she seems, but I'm choosing to believe in good people again, one careful step at a time. The support group I joined has become one of the most important parts of my life. We meet on the third Thursday of every month in the basement of St. Catherine's Church. There are usually 8 to 12 of us, mostly women, though occasionally a man joins. We're all survivors of elder abuse, financial exploitation, physical neglect, emotional manipulation. Last month, a woman named Dorothy shared her story. She was 81, and her grandson had been stealing her Social Security checks for 3 years. She didn't report him because she was afraid he'd go to jail, afraid she'd lose the only family she had left. "But I was already losing myself," she said, her voice breaking. So what was I really protecting? I reached across the circle and held her hand. "You're protecting yourself now," I told her. "And that's what matters. That's what I've learned, more than anything else. Protecting others at the cost of your own well-being isn't love. It's self-destruction. Real love has boundaries. Real love requires truth. Real love doesn't ask you to swallow poison and call it medicine." I've been asked to speak at senior centers and community events about my experience. The first time was terrifying, standing in front of a room full of strangers, telling them how I'd been betrayed by my own daughter-in-law, how I'd nearly lost everything. It felt like stripping naked in public. But when I finished, an elderly man in the back row raised his hand. "My son's wife has been asking me to sign some papers," he said quietly. "She says it's to make things easier when I'm gone. But something feels wrong. After hearing your story, I think I need to talk to a lawyer first." That's when I understood. My pain had purpose. My story had power. If my story helps one woman open her eyes, if it gives one person permission to trust their instincts, if it saves even one life, then everything I went through was worth it. I've also learned something about forgiveness, though not in the way people usually mean. I haven't forgiven Claire. I don't know if I ever will. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to people who hurt you. It's not a debt you have to pay to prove your healing. But I have forgiven myself. I've forgiven myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for drinking that tea, for doubting my own reality when everyone around me said I was wrong, for being human and vulnerable and trusting. Those aren't failures. Those are just the costs of being someone who loves openly and believes in goodness. Thomas and I were sitting on the porch last Sunday after Sarah left. It was one of those perfect September evenings when the air is cool, but the sun is still warm. "Mom," he said suddenly, "do you ever wish you'd never welcomed Claire into our family? That you'd seen through her from the beginning?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally, "because for 2 years I believed I had a daughter. I believed our family was growing. I believed in something beautiful. That belief brought me joy, even if it was based on a lie. Claire took a lot from me, Thomas, but she can't take the fact that I'm someone who believes in good people. That's mine. That's who I am. Even after everything, especially after everything." He leaned his head on my shoulder the way he used to when he was small, and we sat there in comfortable silence as the fireflies began to dance in the garden. "Here's what I want you to know, whoever you are, wherever you're listening from. If you're in a situation that feels wrong, trust yourself. If someone is telling you you're crazy, paranoid, confused, but your gut is screaming danger, listen to your gut. Your instincts exist to protect you. And if you've already been betrayed, if someone you trusted has hurt you deeply, please hear this. What happened to you doesn't define you. How they treated you doesn't determine your worth. You can survive this. You can heal. You can become someone even stronger than you were before, not because pain makes you stronger, but because you choose to keep going anyway. I think about Claire sometimes. I wonder if she's truly sorry, or if that letter was just another manipulation. I wonder what she tells herself in that cell at night. I wonder if she's capable of real remorse, or if she'll always be someone who blames circumstances instead of choices. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. Because my story isn't about her anymore. It's about me, about the roses I planted, about the Sunday dinners with my son, about the women in my support group who are learning to trust again, about choosing joy even when you know how quickly it can be taken away. Last week, I bought a new set of teacups. They're simple white porcelain with small blue flowers. When I look at them, I don't see betrayal. I just see what they are. Cups. Objects. Things I can choose to use or not use, fill or leave empty, keep or give away. I control that now. I control my story. The garden outside my window is preparing for winter. The roses will lose their blooms soon. The leaves will fall. Everything will look dead and barren. But I know something now that I didn't know 3 years ago. Winter isn't an ending. It's just a season. And on the other side of winter, there's always spring. I'm 72 years old. I was poisoned by someone I loved. I nearly lost my mind, my home, my life. I sat in a courtroom and watched my family fracture. I threw away a cup that had been in my family for generations because it had been turned into a weapon. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still planting roses and making tea and believing in tomorrow. And if you're reading this, if you've stayed with me through this whole long story, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing. Thank you for caring about one old woman's truth. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about someone you know who might be in danger, or if it simply reminded you that survival is possible, then please share it. Subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. Sometimes one story can change an entire day. It can open eyes that were closed. It can give courage to someone who thought they had none left. Turn on the bell. Stay connected. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a grandmother, a mother, an elderly neighbor who seems a little too tired, a little too confused, share this story with them. Sometimes the truth arrives not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet voice saying, "You're not crazy. You're not imagining things. Trust yourself. God bless you for listening. God bless you for caring. And may you always have the courage to trust your own truth, even when the whole world tells you you're wrong." See you next time, my friends. Until then, stay strong, stay aware, and remember, you are worth protecting, always.